If you've ever tried to keep your heart rate low during a run, you know how frustrating or even impossible that can feel at times. Well, today we're going to be talking about how slow you should be running your easy runs at, and we'll also be going over how to calculate your own personal heart rate training zones, as well as some tips on how to improve your running form and how you can ultimately run faster at a lower heart rate. Mastering the art of running easy or in zone 2 is crucial for building that strong aerobic base and that overall endurance, and by the end of this video you'll know exactly what you need to be doing to achieve this. So how slow should our easy runs be? Well, you should be able to hold a conversation at this pace. Running with a friend or a colleague or just someone you know, going out for a little bit of a chit chat and catch up is a great way to tell you're running at the right sort of intensity. There's also some calculators online. Our favourite is the Jack Daniels calculator, where you can put in some recent race results or just some times of where you think your fitness is currently at, and then it will give you some rough guides for where it thinks your various training zones are. Most importantly, we're looking for that zone 2, for that easy pace. But for some people, they want the absolute gold standard, the most accurate way of doing their easy runs. And how are we going to do this? Well, we need to calculate our heart rate training zones. There's basically 3 different ways you can do this. The first one being another form of some online calculators. These are very, very generalized, but they'll give you a rough idea of where you're at. The second option, which will give you the very, very best data, now I've done this a few times, we'll put some footage of me in the lab, is to go into a lab and get your lactate threshold and your VO2 max tested, and as part of that they will give you your own personal heart rate training zones that you can then take and use those in your training. In the UK, this is going to be around about 150 to 200 pounds, and then what's going to appeal for most people, the middle ground between those two, is to test these out yourself. And for this you're going to need to know your maximum heart rate and also your resting heart rate. So to calculate your maximum heart rate, and I would always say please get some medical advice if you're at all unsure, and definitely you should be doing this in a supervised environment, but you basically need to be pushing yourself to the absolute limit. This is very, very tough on the body. Please don't do this if you've got absolutely no running fitness or you're feeling slightly ill. Now, the best thing is to do is to get yourself a heart rate monitor, a chest strap, or at the very least a armband. These will be far more accurate than the heart rate monitors that are built into some of our watches these days. These are very vague at best. They're very good for looking at your heart rate long term, but for in the moment they're really not going to be accurate enough for what we're trying to achieve here. There's a couple of options here of what to do when you're all set up, heart rate monitors ready to go. The first one is to run 400 meters fairly hard, fairly intense, and then another 400 meters absolutely flat out. The maximum heart rate will be somewhere towards that second rep of 400 meters, and then you can just look through the data and see where your heart rate gets up to. Another option you can do here is to find a decent hill in your local area and then progressively pick up speed, pick up intensity as you start running up that hill. Do this for around about 60 seconds for that rep, and again then look at the data afterwards. Super fit people might want to repeat this 2 or 3 times for those 400 meter reps, or 2 or 3 times to do those hill reps, and just see where their heart rate is spiking to at the end of the data. Before you do these, you want to make sure you're properly warmed up. You're going to be going some very intense running straight away, so I'd say at least around 15 minutes of super easy jogging, lots of dynamic stretching as well before you get going. If you are a little bit injured or a little bit unwell or don't want to go out and do something like that straight away, go back and look at some of your historical data from the last couple of months leading up to where you are now. Have you done a hill rep session? Have you done some all-out efforts? Have you done a max 5k, for example? Just look through that data. If you've got reliable chest strap or arm strap data, have a look, see where it is peaking. Some of the running apps as well, such as Garmin and things, will be able to tell you what your maximum heart rate is by reading the data that is fed into it as well. So there you go, you've got your maximum heart rate data. Then we need to find out our resting heart rate. Now what I recommend here is to take your pulse first thing in the morning, just over the course of maybe 2 or 3 days. Most modern watches will give you a resting heart rate data, and this is going to be fairly accurate. Watches these days with the wrist-based heart rate are pretty good at looking at long-term heart rate data, so I would trust the figure that your watch is giving you if you have that available to you. So now we've got those 2 figures, and for simplicity I'm going to say my maximum heart rate is 180 and my resting heart rate is 60. Now again, there's some online calculators where you can plug these figures in that you've now calculated. It will spit out your exact heart rate training training zones. Again, we'll link to those down below. A lot of links down below in this video. But for example, maximum heart rate 180, resting heart rate 60 gives us a heart rate reserve of 120 beats a minute. This is the range of what's available to us in our daily life, basically. The lowest it will be and the highest it will be in our current state of health. So for zone 1, this is going to be 50 to 60% of our heart rate reserve. Very easy recovery jogging. Zone 2, 60 to 70% of our heart rate reserve for our easy runs, our conversational pace, and also some of our long runs as well to build that endurance. Zone 3, 70 to 80% of our heart rate reserve. This is going to be some moderate intensity. We don't spend too much time here in this zone. Zone 4, 80 to 90% of our heart rate reserve. This is our tempo, our threshold efforts, intervals. This builds performance, it builds speed. It really helps to build our ability to run faster. And then finally, zone 5, 90 to 100% of our heart rate reserve. This really is reserved just for those race sprint finishes and really short intervals as well, and potentially some hill reps and things like that, just when we're peaking right at the top of a rep. So let's calculate our zone 2 heart rate using our data of 180 for our maximum and then 60 for our resting heart rate. So our really simple formula here for calculating it is that percentage of our heart rate reserve plus adding back on our resting heart rate. So here we're looking for that 60 to 70% range. So 0.6 for our 60%, times by 120 for our heart rate reserve, and then add on 60, which gives our lowest value of 132 beats a minute, which is where our zone 2 section starts. And then our upper end of the zone, here we're looking for that 70%. So 0.7 times 120 for our heart rate reserve, adding on that 60 for our resting heart rate gives us 144. So our zone 2 heart rate section in our example is 132 to 144 beats a minute. But what do we do with this data now we've got it? Well, like with anything, the more you practice something, the better you're going to get at it. And in this instance, it's that zone 2, that easy pace running we want to be practicing. So for your easy runs, around about 80% of our total weekly volume, put your heart rate monitor on, your chest strap or your arm strap. We'll link some recommended heart rate monitors down below as well. Stick to that zone 2 running. You can set up alerts on your watch if it goes too high or too low, just to keep yourself dialed in that exact right zone. Now, for some people, especially when they start out, me definitely included in this, running in zone 2 will feel painfully slow and it can be quite frustrating and you feel like you're hardly moving. But believe me, stick with this and you will speed up over time. Your easy runs will get a lot faster because over time your fitness will grow, your body will be adapting, and you'll be able to run faster at this lower heart rate. So practice and be patient. You might need to walk. I definitely did when I first started out doing this, just to bring your heart rate back down, get it dialed in back in the correct zone. You also really need to lose the ego and have some patience as well. A lot of people putting their runs on social media, on Strava, want to be running fast all the time. That's not how you're going to improve. You need to lose that ego. You might be running a lot slower than you're going to be used to for those first few weeks, but stick with it. You will improve, you will get faster, and you will see yourself naturally running at a faster speed at a lower heart rate. Eventually, over time, you'll know what this will feel like, and this is why a lot of elite runners or more experienced runners will say, I just run on feel, and I do a lot of my running now like that. I know what easy pace feels like, I know how my body should be feeling, and so when I'm out on my easy runs, I don't always need to be monitoring this sort of stuff, because you just get a good feeling of what it's like. But for some beginner runners, some people trying to improve, learn more about running, use that technology to monitor it, make sure you know what you're doing, your body will adapt, and then you'll start to understand what it all feels like. Quickly guys, if you are finding this video useful, please smash that like button, potentially share it with a friend that's always running too fast on their easy runs, and also check out my website benparks.com. We've got 5-star rated training plans on there, helping runners all over the world improve their running. We've got awesome running hats and some of the very best technical gear out there to help you with your running. Thanks very much guys. Right, back to the video. There's also some other really important things we need to have a chat about when we're trying to run at a nice low heart rate in our easy zone 2. There's some things that might be affecting it as well, such as temperatures, high humidity as well. The body is going to have to be working a lot harder. So when we are running in the summer or warmer climates, you're going to be running again a little bit slower as well. This is when heart rate monitor training can be really, really good, because you always know you're going to be training in the right zone, but you might be running a little bit slower as you're used to because your body's having to work that little bit harder to keep cool. Also, hydration is really important. If you do become a little bit dehydrated, your body's going to have to work a little bit harder to deliver that oxygen to the muscles. So make sure you're definitely hydrated and keep hydrated when you're going out on your long runs. The elevation of the route you're running on will play a big factor as well. If you're going up a hill, your heart rate is going to spike. You might need to have to walk or slow it down a lot just to bring that heart rate back down. And I would say if you are running on a particularly hilly course, you could just look at something like your average heart rate over the course of a run. It'd be so hard if you're having to stop all the time. Just have average heart rate potentially on the data field on your watch. Also altitude, if you are running up in the mountains somewhere, again, there's less oxygen available, you'll be running a little bit slower as well. And then finally, things like caffeine, alcohol, lack of sleep and fatigue, these are going to affect how your body is going to be feeling. These are other things we have to factor in of why we might be running a little bit slower. Right, moving on, let's have a chat about running form and efficiency. This is all about how we can cover the ground from point A to point B using as little energy as possible, keeping that heart rate nice and low. There's some really good things we can do here to improve our running form. Very, very simple. The first one is all about strides, running at a very fast rate, just for very short bursts of time, about 20 seconds maximum. Also doing things like hill reps as well, super important. It's very hard to run with bad form with hill reps. Both of these things will get you running well and also get you nice and strong. Some other things we can focus on as we're running, making sure we're landing nicely under our center of mass, not out in front of you, which can be a bit of a braking force. And then finally, all about increasing our cadence. Potentially, depends where your cadence is. A lot of people, when they start out, their cadence is quite low, in the 150s, the 160s, which just means we're not moving in the most efficient way possible. The area we're going to be focusing on for a lot of our easy running is around about sort of 175 up to 180, potentially just over 180. We've got a whole video on how to improve your cadence. Again, we'll link to that up here and down below as well. So lots there to get stuck into. Hope you found the video useful. Please let me know any questions down in the comments. We'll hang out down there to answer your questions. We're always here to help with your running. That's it, guys. Keep on working hard. Keep on getting it done. We'll see you very soon in the next one.